All right, so now we are going to look at how to make like a high-tech grid in Illustrator. Now this is very easy, so we're just gonna crack right into this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select my rectangle grid tool right here. And if you don't see this, just go up to your window and then go down to toolbars and make sure that you have the advanced toolbar selected, and then it should appear. Now I'm going to click on my workspace here, and this rectangle grid tools options appears. And I'm gonna make sure that my horizontal dividers and my vertical dividers are set to 10. So that's good. And I have this use outside rectangle as frame selected as well. And the fill grid is not selected. So I'm gonna press OK. And I'm gonna delete this guy actually. And I'm gonna go ahead and create a new grid. So go up to the corner, press Shift, hold down, snap it to the bottom. And now what we're going to do is we are going to duplicate this by clicking on the selection tool first, and then by pressing Alt and then clicking on the grid, and then Shift to drag it over. And get it to the point where they are intersected on each other. And I'm going to zoom in to make sure that they're really tight. That looks good. That looks good to me. And you can adjust these to where you want them to be. So if you want to drag them over, you can do that if you want. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some little black squares. And I'm going to place them on my grid here. So press M for my square tool. Zoom in a little bit. And then I'm going to draw out a square like this. Maybe a little bit smaller. And I'm going to make sure that this guy is centered. And I'm going to zoom in really close like this and get this guy right on here. Just like that. And make sure that it's perfect. And I'm going to give him a fill of black right here. Click off. So that looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually zoom out a little bit. Maybe a little bit closer. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Alt and Shift and drag down. And make sure that this guy locks in nice and tight and perfect on this next intersect here. And if you want to see this like perfectly, just turn on your outline. And you can see if you are on your point. And that looks good. I'll turn the outline off. Zoom out. Now what I'm going to do is press Ctrl D, and that is going to duplicate the last function that I did, which was copying the square. So I'll do this. So now I have my squares all aligned on my line. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my layers, and I am going to create a new layer. And I'm going to grab all my rectangles by pressing on the first one and holding down Shift and then clicking on the last one to grab them all. And then I'm going to drag them up to this layer 2. And I'm going to call the layer 1 grid. And the layer 2 I'm going to call squares. Now what we're going to do is we're going to lock our grid so that we can select our squares only. I'm going to press V to pick up my selection tool. I'm going to select them all, and then I'm going to press Alt and then Shift, and then I'm going to pull over and make sure that they are on the intersect. So I'm going to get up close, and that looks good. Now I'm going to press Ctrl D to duplicate that last command. All the way to the end, press V, and now we have our grid that has been created. A nice UI grid that you can use in, say, Photoshop or even After Effects. So I hope that you learned something in this tutorial and that you will give it a try. Until next time.